So I grew up in church. Church for me was less about relationship and more about checking the box. It was a ritual. It was what we did, a task to complete every week. So I knew who God was, I knew who Jesus was, but I did not have a relationship with him. After a broken engagement, I got very frustrated with the Lord. I felt like I had done everything I was supposed to do. I checked the boxes. I did what I was told, and the plans that I had for my life just weren't coming to light. They weren't happening. And so that frustration led into a season of rebellion to the point where I didn't even recognize who I was anymore. But God did not leave me there. He literally called out in an audible voice and met me in my brokenness and pulled me out of the pit that I had dug for myself. That moment shifted everything for me. I went from being a let's get the box checked churchgoer to fully surrendering my life to the Lord. In 2024, I felt the Lord calling me into ministry, calling me into more. And on July 7th of that year, I was baptized, and it was almost like a springboard into the more that God has for me. I don't know exactly what that more looks like. It's still being written. But what I do know is we were not made for rituals. We were not made for religion. We were not made to check boxes. We were made for relationship with Jesus. And a relationship with Jesus is where we find our identity.
Come on. I'll just pretend that clap was for me coming on stage, but whatever. No, Allison, thank you so much for that word. If you haven't figured it out, that's going to be we call it a bumper for each week. So we're going to do 8 weeks of this, actually 7, because we have Summer Blockbuster the week of July 4th, weekend of July 4th. So we'll have a little mini testimony for each one of these. And so they're all powerful, and I hope that you'll make it for each one. Today we'll talk about campfire stories. Has anybody ever prayed, Lord, I trust you as long as this all works out like I want? You ever had that prayer? I have. I'll raise my hand. I pray that and say, Lord, I trust you. If you can just earn my trust right here. I want you to earn it. We kind of treat God like our experience at, what Applebee's or something. Is Applebee's still a thing? There's not one around here. But like, I'll go back if it's good service. I'll go back if the food is good. And sometimes we treat God like that. And I want you to know today, we don't trust God because he came through last time or this time. We trust God because he's worthy to be trusted. And whether he came across like we wanted to, or he came through like we wanted to, I want to give you today 4 declarations. In fact, the name of my message today is simply that: 4 declarations of unshakable faith. And surprisingly enough, and there's going to be a shocker, I'm going to talk about the 3 Hebrew children and the fiery furnace today. And so we just kind of sang about it with the song that we just sang. But I want to talk about this. This is 4. If we get this is 4 statements that we can make and say, my faith is going to stand firm. Because listen, faith is not proven before the trial. It's proven before the trial, not after the miracle. All right? Faith is proven before the trial. You have to be ready before the trial hits. And so many people, and so many church people, they have a trial hit. They weren't ready for it. You don't have time to get ready. Once you get, Mike Tyson says everybody's got a plan to get punched in the face. And so you gotta have a game plan. The devil punched you in the face and you weren't ready for it. And so we have this story of the 3 Hebrew children and Daniel. Also, all of them came out of captivity. And so Israel was captured. And so they came out of captivity. They were captives. And so the king says, hey, look, pick 4 great young men who can lead, men of like a royal family. And I want to train them. And so they got into some training. And so these guys were actually captive. And the king calls them in. He changes their name. And we're going to pick up the story in Daniel 3. So if you have your Bibles, flip to Daniel 3. If you have your phones, go ahead and click there. I want you to see this. We're going to share just a few verses out of Daniel 3. It is after Proverbs and Psalms. And so if you keep digging a little bit further to the right, go to Proverbs and turn right. And there's a few books after that. But Daniel writes this story. There's a story written about this that's so powerful. There's so much here. I just want to read 3 verses right here, and then we're going to talk about it. In verse 16, so the king builds a 90-foot by 90-foot statue, okay? By the way, if you want to know how much that is, this building is 90 foot wide, all right? So the statue was as wide as this building and as tall as this building is wide, and he wanted everybody to worship it whenever they heard the music playing. And so we're going to pick up the story. And so they said they weren't going to bow, so they got ratted on, and as we know, snitches get stitches, and so they got snitched on because they weren't bowing. And so we pick up the story, and this is them coming to the king and telling them how they feel. This is verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you," because he said, you're going to die if you don't bow. "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty." And then verse 18, I'm going to tell you, this is some powerful words right here. "But even if he doesn't," son, even if he doesn't, we want to make it very clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the God of the gold statue that you have set up. And so they made it very clear, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, we are not going to bow. We are not going to bow. And they make declarations right here, I believe, that's in these 3 verses, that if we'll make these declarations today, we will walk a path of faith. Now, I think that you can get into 2 ditches, what I'm going to talk about. You can have a ditch that says whatever happens, happens. Like God's in control, he's sovereign, he's just going to do it. That's not biblical. And then you can get into the other ditch and say, God will come through every time. I know a lot of people who die with a lot of faith. There's some great Christian leaders who had a healing ministry that died of an aneurysm. There's story after story. So I think you can get in both ditches and say whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And you get over here and say, well, God, he's going to come through every time. And this scripture teaches that God came through. All right, as you know, we're going to keep reading in a few minutes, but he came through. But we have to treat every situation like God's will is going to be done no matter what. So there's 4 declarations that I see in this passage that if we'll make these declarations, we'll have a strong faith life. Here's the first one. Even if he doesn't, I'm still going to serve him joyfully. Hello. Glory. Somebody say glory. Glory. Even if he doesn't come through, even if I don't get that job, even if I don't get that girl to marry, even if I don't get that raise that I'm looking for, even if this situation I have health-wise doesn't work out. Now, I believe that God wants you to walk in freedom. I think he wants you to walk in healing. I believe all those things. But even if he doesn't, I'm still going to serve him joyfully. I don't care what's going on. I'm going to serve him joyfully. You know what's cool about these guys? If you go back and read verse 4 of Daniel 1, it says that they were suited to serve. They got picked. These guys got picked as they were suited to serve. Can we say that about us today? Are you suited to serve? Yeah, this is awesome. We have something called Fast Track here. And yesterday we had a Fast Track. 7 people graduated Growth Track yesterday. Come on. All in one day. And now they're suited to serve. And so these guys are suited to serve. Look what he tells them. Let's go back to our passage. Look at verse 17. It said, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. They said, look, we're still going to serve him. We're going to go down swinging. You might go down swinging. You might say, we're going to go down serving, all right? Some of us need to go down serving. Some of y'all haven't got on a team yet because you're just like, I'm just waiting for this situation to get better. I'm just waiting for my kids to get to a certain age. I'm just waiting for my kids to maybe even move out. I'm just waiting for this job to settle down a little bit. Let me just tell you, if you wait, you're not going to go down serving, all right? You're just not going to serve. God's called us to serve. He's given us gifts that we can walk in, and these guys were suited to serve. It says the God whom we serve is able to save us, and even if he doesn't, we're still going to serve him. We're still going to serve him joyfully. I love Habakkuk. I just like to say Habakkuk. Habakkuk. I love this verse. This really teaches us the attitude that we should have. Look at what Habakkuk says. Even though the fig trees have watch all the negatives in this, okay? There's no blossoms on the fig trees. There's no grapes on the vines. The olive crops have failed. The fields lie empty and barren. Even though the flocks die in the fields and the cattle barns are empty. Is Tammy or Robert Cole here? Maybe your cattle runs away. They lost some cows recently. I think they all came home. Look at this. No matter what happens, there's no fruit on the vines. The cattle are dead in the field. Look at this. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will serve joyfully. I will be joyful. He said, I'm going to serve him joyfully. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. Last week in our big huddle we've had 2 big huddles in a row. And last week I shared about how the fuel that we love people with out of Colossians 1 is the hope of glory. It's the hope of glory. The hope that we have in eternity says the joy, I'm going to serve, I'm going to rejoice in the Lord because I'm joyful because he's the God of my salvation. And so many times we look at our temporary situations and put permanent names to them and say, no, I'm just not. This is never going to happen. And God say, no, I got something bigger for you. I got something more. And we never look past our situation that we're in and say, God, I want what you want. I want to go where you want me to go. Job said, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. Though he slay me. Though he slay me. I want to tell you today, 1 Peter 5 says that, or 1 Peter 1 says, he had joy unspeakable. Joy so good you couldn't even talk about it. I wish I could tell you how joyful I am today, but there ain't no words. It's indescribable. That's what he was saying. It's unspeakable joy. It's just so good. And so if we would serve him joyfully, that's a declaration of a faithful person. Even if he doesn't, I'm going to serve him joyfully. Here's the second thing that they said in this passage. Even if he doesn't, he's still able. Even if he doesn't, he's still able. Listen, our stability does not impact his ability. Our situation, our stable situation, our stability does not impact his ability. And not because he can't, it's just because he didn't. Let me ask you this. When you have a situation that looks dire, do you keep fasting? Do you keep praying? Do you keep seeking his face? You should. We should. We should constantly do that. Listen, we should seek his face no matter what because, listen, he is still able. Look at what he says in verse 17. Let's go back to that passage. Look at verse 17 in our passage. From the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. Able to save us. Now, I love that word for able. It means to have the ability and the strength. It means to have the ability to do it and the strength to do it. There's nothing stopping God from being able to do it. So he's still able, even if he doesn't in this moment, at this point. And I love what he says here. Dad and I were talking about this sermon this week, and sometimes I'll get pointers from him, and I don't give him credit. I'm going to give him credit on this one. This one's good, okay? I said, hey, you got any pointers on the 3 Hebrew children? And he said, in the passage, we weren't looking at the Bible. He just knew what it said. It says, he will rescue us from your power. They're talking to the king. So listen, they say, look, we're going to be rescued from you. If you throw us in the fire, we're going to heaven. All right? We're going to be rescued from you either way. Either God's going to get in it with us and save us, or we're going to walk out. Either way, we're rescued from your power. And look how honorable they are. And then they said, your majesty. I think that was just a little left hook right there. Like I ain't got to listen to you, your majesty. That's like saying all due respect and then just cutting somebody down. You can't do that. That's not right. You shouldn't do that. One of my favorite songs, I think it's God is Able. God is able. He will never fail. He is Almighty God. I love that. I love that song because he's able. No matter what we're doing, he is able to reach down where we are and help us. I love Jeremiah 32:17. O sovereign Lord, you made the heavens and the earth by your strong hand and powerful arm. Nothing is too hard for you. Do you know how much stuff God made in this world? He made every stuff. He made it all. He made everything. He says, you made the heavens and the earth by your strong hand and your powerful arm. He made it all. And you know what the Bible says in the Psalms about the stars, about all the power and majesty of the stars? He made the stars also. That's what it says. Just one little sentence that talks about all the power. If you just don't know how many stars we have, I just want to share this with you. This is crazy. There are 100 to 400 billion with a B stars in our Milky Way galaxy. Just in our galaxy, 100 to 400 billion. We can't even imagine what that looks like. And not only that, but there are about 2 trillion galaxies in our observable universe. That is one strong hand. That is one strong arm right there. And all he did was he spoke it into existence. Can I just give you a word today? Your problem ain't too big for God. It ain't too big for his ability. I think he can handle your relationship problem. I think he can handle your $100 deficit that you have in your checking account right now. Or 97 or whatever it is. I think he can handle your problems. By the way, if you want to know what a trillion is the 2 trillion is a 2 with 12 zeros behind it. That's 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's 2 trillion galaxies that have billions of stars in them. I would say God's able to probably handle your situation. Even if he doesn't, he is still able. Ephesians 3:20 says it like this. Now all glory to God who is able, through his mighty power at work within us, to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think. God is able. So if you would make that declaration, even if he doesn't, he's still able. Even if he doesn't, he is still able. Maybe you have a diagnosis and you're like, that's just too big for God. Listen, I don't even like to use the C word. I don't even like to use the word cancer, but God's bigger than cancer. We've seen that. Have we not seen that? I saw Darby Quinn in here somewhere and Cammie. Is God bigger than cancer? God's bigger than anything that you can throw at him. He's bigger. He created 2 trillion galaxies that have billions of stars in them, each one. I don't think your problem's too big for him. Even if he doesn't, he is still able. Now, we should believe that he's going to. Now, don't hear me. Don't get in that ditch and say, oh, the pastor said he might not do it. Well, he might not. That's something. He's all sovereign, but he's given us his word to pray and seek his face and take authority over situations as well. So don't get in the ditch right here and say, oh, just let whatever happen. No. I want to say, if you can have the faith that these guys say, even if he doesn't, I know he's still able. Your ability is not, your stability is not tied to his ability. Here's number 3. Even if he doesn't, you better be strong on this one today. I won't compromise. Even if he doesn't come through, I ain't compromising. What are you bowing to? We read this story like it's no big deal. Like, yeah, I know what happens. They get thrown in the fire and they walk out. I want you to think about them in the moment. These are 3 young men, strapping young men who had a lot of learning, and they were just great young men from a royal family, and they were standing before their death and saying, God, I know that I know that you can, and I think that you will, but even if you don't, I ain't compromising. What are you bound to? Career? A relationship? Are you bound to approval? Maybe you're bowing to an applause. Maybe you're bowing to comfort. Listen, ain't nobody likes comfort like I do. We had the grandkids this week when Megan and Anton went to camp. That was a great video too, by the way. The students had a great time. And we did too. We had the grandkids and it was great, but I had to sleep in the spare room bed. And it ain't my bed. I'll just be real with you. It's in my house, but it ain't my bed. I love me some comfort. We got to sleep in our own bed again together. The last 2 nights has been amazing. Our grandkids are awesome. We had a great time with them, but I love me some comfort. Now, there's a reason I'm wearing some Hokas, all right? Glory. Some Hoka glory. I love me. Why? I like comfort. And I'll be honest with you, in the United States, we like to bow to comfort sometimes. So no matter what happens, I'm not going to compromise. Let me just tell you, the world wants you to compromise right now. It's Pride Month right now, supposedly. And I know there are professional baseball players, hockey players, they said, I'm not doing it. Just not going to do it. I'm not going to bow. Y'all, don't bow to culture. Now, you might get talked about and posted about. Listen, people that you tick off can't save you, but God can. We get that twisted. Well, what's people going to say? Who cares? They didn't go down the cross for you 2,000 years ago. Who cares what they say? I'm telling you, the church may be ready to stand up. We can't compromise. We cannot compromise. We're going to preach it. Now, you can not compromise and not be mean. I ain't talking about being mean. I'm just talking about don't compromise. Don't bow to whatever it is. Because I'm going to just tell you, you say, well, my boss is making me do this. Well, your boss ain't your provider. He's not. Your boss is not your provider. He's got a better way. He's got a different way. You got to stay true to what God calls you to. And again, don't be mean about it, but don't compromise. Look what it tells him. I love this. But even if he doesn't, love that phrase. We want to make it clear to you that your majesty, that we will never, not maybe, not, well, here's what we love to do as Christians, don't we? Let me pray about it. You want me to do that thing that might be compromising my integrity at work? Let me pray about it. No, we ain't got to pray. We ain't got to have no prayer meeting. Let's think about it. Let's just sit here. Can we just have a little powwow, us 3, and let's just talk? They said, no, we ain't doing it. We already talked. We already decided. These are declarations of faith saying, no, we already ready to make our decision. They didn't have to talk about it. We didn't have to talk about it. No matter what, we're not going to compromise. We will never. I love that. It says, serve your little g gods and worship your gold statue that you have set up. You better know what you believe and why you believe it. Y'all, this generation is the most persecuted generation of Christianity ever. Ever. I had a pastor friend 10 years ago said, it's the hate speech things in Canada, and I have a friend that in fact, there's a friend of mine I met at a conference. He got locked up for hate speech because he said a marriage is a man and a woman. Y'all, it's coming. I hope you better know what you believe and why you believe and be ready to stand on it. It's coming. And I ain't trying to speak death of you. I'm just saying we have the hope of glory inside of us, and we got to let it out. Come on. We got to be ready. I'm not going to compromise. I'm not going to compromise. No matter what, I'm not compromising. Peter says this in Acts 5. They were saying, hey, look, we told you to stop preaching about this God. We told you to stop talking about Jesus. And I love this. I love what he says. He says, but Peter responded, we must obey God rather than any human authority. Listen, you might say, well, I got my convictions. I'm holding dear to them. Let me just give you a word this morning. Convictions that disappear under pressure are merely preferences. Convictions that disappear under pressure, that's just a preference that you have. That ain't a conviction. A conviction is going to stand strong. They're going to say, you know what, throw me in the fire. You either get in there with me or I'm going to glory. Either way, I'm getting away from you. You better determine your obedience before you're tested. Here's number 4. Even if he doesn't, he will still be with me. Son, this might be my favorite one of all of them. This might be my favorite point of all of these. Even if he doesn't, he's still going to be with me. I love this story. If you don't know the whole story, they said, though, they got thrown into a fire that was 7 times hotter. In fact, the guys that threw them in died from the heat. All right? They died from the heat. And so Nebuchadnezzar looks into the fire, and this is where we pick up the story a few verses later in verses 24 and 25. And you need a suddenly in your life, by the way. But suddenly, I love that. But suddenly, he stood up, he jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace? Yes, your majesty, we replied. We certainly did, they replied. Look, Nebuchadnezzar shouted, I see 4 men unbound, walking around the fire unharmed, and the 4th one looks like a god. Now, I was like, I don't like that he put a little g right there. That should be a big G, but I come to understand this. He hadn't met the big G God yet. Nebuchadnezzar didn't, all he ever knew was little G gods. We had some friends that went to a mission trip in Nepal, and they were talking about Jesus, and so they gave him a Bible, and so they just put the Bible on the shelf. They have like 20 gods in their room, and they just put the Bible on the shelf with the rest of the gods. It was a little G God to them. But just tell you, he called him a little G God because he ain't met the big G God yet. He ain't met him yet. So he says it looks like a God that's in there. And how did he even recognize that? Because the Bible very clearly tells us what happens in Isaiah 43:2. I love this. When you go through the deep waters, I will be with you. And when you go through the rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. And when you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. I will be with you. I love that powerful, powerful declaration. No matter what happens, I'm going to be with you. Psalms 23 says it like this. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. He said, you're close beside me. He's walking with you. By the way, did you know God's name was Andy? Anybody know that? The old hymn, Andy walks with me, Andy talks with me. I didn't make it up. It's the hymn wrote about it. And he walks with me, and he talking about God. God's name is Andy. Well, my name's Andrew, so it doesn't really mean anything to me, but he wants to walk beside you. He says, you are close beside me, not distant, not down the road, not even way ahead of me or way behind me. No, he's going to walk with me, walk beside me, whatever I'm going through. Listen, sometimes God rescues us from the fire, and sometimes he walks with us through it. Sometimes he rescues you before you have to go into it, and sometimes he gets in there with you, because that's what happened here. And here's what happens. They came out. Look at this. They came out of the fire. The advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their head was singed, and their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell like smoke. You can't be around somebody that smokes a cigarette and not smell like smoke. They just blow it in your way a little bit. Now you got to go change clothes if you don't like cigarette smoke. They didn't even smell like smoke. Not a hair was singed on their head. And I love the advisors. It says the advisor came around them and they saw everything that happened. And then watch what Nebuchadnezzar says. Praise to the big G God. Come on. He looked like a little G God. Praise to the big G God. Capital G God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent an angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. And look what he says. This is the last statement I'm going to share with you today. He says this. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any little G God except their own big G God. There's going to be a point you're going to have to stand up. There's going to be a point in your life where you're going to have to say, no matter what happens, I'm going to stand with Jesus. And I'm going to tell you, in America, it's hard for us to imagine that. In America, it's hard for us to imagine that one day we're going to have to say, I'm either believing Jesus or I'm going to get shot. Now, I pray that never happens. I hope Jesus comes back before that happens. But it's happening in schools. There are stories of schools where the shooter says, do you believe in Jesus? And they stand up and say yes, and he shoots them. God didn't stop the bullet, but he was with them in it. Can you trust in God enough to say, I'm all in no matter what? There's a story I want to share with you this morning. Some of you may know this story, but In 1945, a German pastor named Dietrich Bonhoeffer sat in a Nazi prison awaiting execution. Bonhoeffer had spent years courageously standing for Christ while much of Germany bowed to Hitler. He could have escaped. He had chances to stay in America, to come to the U.S. and stay safe. He could have escaped. He could have stayed safe. Instead, he chose obedience over comfort and faithfulness over self-preservation. On the morning of April the 9th, just weeks before World War II would end, guards came for him. They led him from the prison cell to the gallows. A doctor who witnessed his final moments said that he saw Bonhoeffer kneel and pray with such peace and confidence in God that he never forgot it. He later wrote that in all of his years as a physician, he had rarely seen anyone die with such a complete surrender to God's will. Bonhoeffer walked to his execution to be hung. He reportedly said this: "This is the end. For me, the beginning of life." God did not deliver him from the gallows. The prison doors did not swing open. The execution was not canceled. But God gave him something greater than an escape. He gave him peace in it. Like these 3 Hebrew children, they made the statement, "My God is able, but even if he doesn't, I will trust him, I will serve him, and I will worship him." The statement of faith says that even if he doesn't, he's still worthy. Even if he doesn't come through in this situation, he's still worthy. And Dietrich, we still talk about his story today because he died with such peace, saying, "I'm going to stand up for Jesus no matter what." I don't know what you're going through, but even if he doesn't, what's your statement going to be? I'm going to pout and cry and leave the church or leave my family or quit my job? No. Even if he doesn't, I'm still going to stand strong. I'm still going to worship him. He's still worthy of all of my praise.